Kendrick Lamar's career is under attack right now. The Game just dropped the most brutal diss track of 2026, and what he's claiming about Kendrick's rise to fame has the entire music industry in absolute chaos. This isn't promotion, this is war. Everybody thought The Game and Kendrick were cool. Two Compton legends doing their own thing, respecting each other's lanes. That was the story we all believed. But new information just shattered that entire narrative. On his explosive mixtape with DJ Drama, The Game didn't just take shots at Kendrick, he declared all-out war, calling him out by name and exposing what he claims is a dark betrayal that's been hidden for over a decade. And the bars, they're vicious. The fallout from this is already devastating, and we're only at the beginning. Let me break down exactly what The Game said, because these bars are career-threatening. He raps, "If I ain't the best rapper from Compton, it gotta be Kendrick. Tell him to step up and end it." That's a direct challenge, but then he drops this line that has everyone's jaw on the floor. "Can't go to war against someone I gave my appendix." Wait, his appendix? Think about that for a second. The Game is claiming he literally gave Kendrick his career. He's saying without him, Kendrick would be nothing, that he discovered him, signed him, built him from the ground up, and now Kendrick has completely erased him from history. The appendix bar is symbolic. Your appendix is an organ you can't survive without. At least, that's what The Game wants you to believe. He's positioning himself as essential to Kendrick's survival in this industry. But here's where this gets insane. TMZ and multiple hip-hop outlets are reporting that this isn't just a one-off diss. The Game has mentioned Kendrick's name on 4 different tracks across multiple projects. And according to industry insiders who spoke to DJ Academics and other sources, The Game actually reached out to Kendrick's team before dropping his first project where he mentioned him. That means this has been building for months. This wasn't spontaneous, this was calculated. And Kendrick? He ignored him completely. Now, fans online turned into full-blown investigators, going through The Game's entire discography, studying every lyric, every interview, every social media post. They're comparing timelines, checking receipts, analyzing the relationship between these two Compton legends. And what they found is wild. The Game has been attaching himself to Kendrick's name for years, dropping his name on virtually every album since 2012. Some fans are saying this looks less like genuine beef and more like a desperate strategy to stay relevant by connecting himself to the biggest name in hip-hop. But that's not even the craziest part. TDE's engineer MW just had a complete meltdown in Australia during Kendrick's GNX tour, and what he revealed, that could be career-destroying for The Game. MW didn't just defend Kendrick, he went nuclear. He brought up disturbing allegations involving The Game and a situation with India Love when she was allegedly 17 years old. He accused The Game of being desperate, clout-chasing, and straight-up lying about his role in Kendrick's rise. MW brutally stated, "Your Compton is not our Compton." Let that sink in. He's suggesting The Game is a fraud who wasn't even relevant in the streets until his big brother created the Game persona for him. He's saying The Game is using Kendrick's name for attention because his own career is collapsing and he needs something, anything, to make people remember he exists. The leaked audio from MW's rant in Australia is shocking. You can hear the raw emotion, the anger, the frustration. This isn't scripted. This isn't promotional theater. MW is personally offended by what The Game is claiming. He's defending Kendrick with the kind of energy you only see when someone is protecting family. And the specific details he dropped about The Game's past, those are the kind of allegations that can't be unsaid. Once that's out there, it's out there. Now let's get into the motive, because this is where everything starts clicking into place and the whole picture becomes crystal clear. The Game has been dealing with serious career struggles for years now. His mainstream relevance has been fading. Think about it. This dude went from being one of the biggest names in West Coast hip-hop in the mid-2000s to fighting for attention in 2025. Back in its peak, around 2005 to 2008, people say he was pulling in millions annually. The documentary went multi-platinum. He was everywhere. But now, his last certified platinum or gold album was years ago. His streaming numbers don't compare to the new generation. His tours aren't selling out like they used to. Meanwhile, Kendrick Lamar is at the absolute peak of his powers. He just destroyed Drake in the biggest rap battle of the decade. Not Like Us became a cultural phenomenon. His GNX album is dominating. He's performing at the Super Bowl. He's won multiple Grammys. He's universally respected as the greatest rapper of his generation. The contrast between where these two Compton legends are right now? That's a massive gap. And that kind of fall-off hits different when you're watching someone from your own city completely eclipse everything you've accomplished. Put all that together, and it looks like the perfect recipe for desperation. The game needs relevance. He needs people talking about him. He needs his name in headlines. And the fastest way to do that? Attack the biggest name in the game. It's a calculated risk. Either Kendrick responds and the game gets the battle he's been begging for, which puts him back in the spotlight, or Kendrick ignores him, which the game can spin as he's scared or he knows I'm right. But here's where the backstory gets even more complicated. The game's manager T recently went on record and confirmed that the game never actually signed Kendrick to any deal. Let me repeat that. The game's own manager said he never signed Kendrick. That means the entire "I gave him everything" narrative might be a fabricated story designed to manipulate public perception and justify this attack. 100, who's connected to both camps, couldn't verify the game's version of events either. When asked directly about the game's role in Kendrick's early career, he was silent. That silence speaks volumes. Industry insiders who were around during Kendrick's come-up tell a completely different story. They say Kendrick was grinding independently with TDE, building his buzz through mixtapes like Overly Dedicated and Section 80. By the time Good Kid MAAD City dropped in 2012, Kendrick was already signed to Aftermath and Interscope through Dr. Dre. The game had zero involvement in that process. He wasn't in the studio, he wasn't executive producing, he wasn't mentoring. The timeline doesn't support his claims at all. So what is true about their connection? Apparently, the game and Kendrick knew each other from Compton. They ran in similar circles. The game might have given Kendrick some early advice or encouragement when he was coming up, but that's a far cry from "I gave him my appendix and I built his entire career." That's the difference between being a supportive OG from the neighborhood and being the architect of someone's success. The game is trying to rewrite history to make himself more important to Kendrick's story than he actually was. And it gets worse for the game. His pattern of name-dropping bigger artists isn't new. He tried to start beef with Eminem years ago. Eminem ignored him. He went at 50 Cent for years. That beef eventually fizzled out. He's thrown shots at Jay-Z, at Meek Mill, at multiple other artists. The common thread? He's always punching up at people who are more successful or more relevant than him at that moment. It's a pattern, and fans are starting to recognize it. The dangerous part about this specific situation is the timing. Kendrick just had the biggest victory of his career against Drake. The entire hip-hop world is celebrating him. His momentum is unstoppable right now. And the game chose this moment to attack. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Because if Kendrick responds, he's coming off the highest high of his career with all the confidence and skill that just demolished one of the biggest rappers alive. The game might be walking into a trap he can't escape. But here's the part that really hits different and shows how personal this situation has become. The person who got caught in the middle of all this chaos was MW, TDE's engineer. This is someone who's been working with Kendrick for years, who's been in the studio for classic albums, who's watched Kendrick build his legacy from the ground up. And he ended up having an emotional breakdown in Australia defending Kendrick against claims he knows are false. The leaked audio from MW's rant shows real pain. You can hear it in his voice, the frustration, the anger, the sense of betrayal that someone would try to diminish everything Kendrick worked for by claiming credit they don't deserve. MW barely does interviews. He stays behind the scenes. He just tries to do his job and support the artists he works with. And he ended up in this situation because the game forced his hand by spreading what MW believes are lies about Kendrick's come-up. That's messed up. When you listen to the full clip, you can hear MW's voice cracking at certain points. You can hear him struggling to contain his emotions while trying to set the record straight. He's not just defending his artist, he's defending someone he clearly considers family. That's somebody's brother in the industry, and they're dealing with the trauma of watching someone try to rewrite history and steal credit for years of hard work they witnessed firsthand. And MW didn't just defend Kendrick in general terms. He got specific. He brought up the game's past controversies. He mentioned the India love situation, which involves serious allegations that the game has never fully addressed publicly. He talked about the game's authenticity in Compton, suggesting his street credibility isn't what he claims it is. Those are nuclear-level accusations that you don't drop casually in a random rant. MW was so fed up, so done with the game's narrative, that he was willing to bring up the darkest parts of the game's past to shut down this false story. The timing of MW's meltdown also suggests something deeper is happening behind the scenes. This wasn't a planned response. This was spontaneous. Something about the game's latest diss pushed MW over the edge. Maybe there are conversations happening internally at TDE about how to handle this. Maybe there's frustration that Kendrick is being forced to deal with this distraction during what should be a celebration of his success. Maybe MW just couldn't hold it in anymore after hearing the game claim credit for Kendrick's career one too many times. Now, this whole situation gets even crazier when you realize the conspiracy theories that are circulating online right now. Some fans believe this entire beef is coordinated promotion for both artists. The theory goes that the game needs attention for his new project. Kendrick wants to keep the momentum going after the Drake battle, and they're working together behind the scenes to create drama that benefits both of them financially. But here's why that theory falls apart. MW's emotional, personal attack completely contradicts the idea of coordinated promotion. Nobody would authorize their engineer to go on an unhinged rant bringing up disturbing allegations about a 17-year-old girl if this was planned marketing. That's not promotion, that's real anger. That's someone who feels personally disrespected and is fighting back with everything they've got. The India love situation MW mentioned is a serious accusation that could have legal implications. You don't play with that kind of allegation for album sales. Fans online been working like full-blown investigators, going deeper into the timeline of events. They discovered that the game has mentioned Kendrick on virtually every album since Kendrick became a superstar. On Jesus Piece in 2012, he referenced Kendrick. On the documentary 2 in 2015, he mentioned him again. On 1992 and 2016, another reference. On Born to Rap in 2019, he brought up Kendrick again. And now on this 2025 mixtape with DJ Drama, he's going harder than ever before. That's a pattern. That's not random. That's a deliberate strategy of attaching himself to Kendrick's name every time he drops a project. And it's not just on albums. The game has done interviews where he's talked about Kendrick, he's posted about him on social media, he's consistently tried to position himself as connected to Kendrick's success story. But here's the thing, Kendrick has never reciprocated. Kendrick doesn't mention the game in his music, he doesn't talk about him in interviews, he doesn't acknowledge the connection the game keeps trying to establish. Online detectives also found something shocking in old interviews. When the game first sent Kendrick his early mixtape years ago, reportedly Kendrick never even responded. That means their relationship might be completely one-sided in the game's mind. He might have built up this narrative where he played a crucial role in Kendrick's career, but Kendrick's perspective could be completely different. Maybe Kendrick saw the game as just another rapper from Compton who gave him some encouragement, nothing more. That disconnect between how the game sees their history versus how Kendrick sees it could be the root of all this tension. Let's keep it real. Everything is speculation until someone directly involved confirms the details. But the evidence we do have paints a picture of the game desperately trying to force a connection that Kendrick doesn't acknowledge. And that desperation is showing more and more with each project where he mentions Kendrick's name. The bigger question fans are asking is why now? Why did the game choose this specific moment to go nuclear with the disses? Kendrick just dropped GNX. He's on tour in Australia. He's riding the highest wave of his career. The game could have done this years ago. He could have done it before the Drake battle. He could have done it after Damn dropped. But he waited until right now when Kendrick is at his absolute peak. That timing is suspicious. It either means the game is trying to steal some of Kendrick's spotlight at his biggest moment, or something happened recently behind the scenes that triggered this escalation. Industry insiders are saying there might have been a rejected collaboration. Rumors suggest the game reached out to Kendrick's team about doing a song together, maybe trying to capitalize on Kendrick's current momentum, and Kendrick's team allegedly said no. That rejection, if true, could have been the final straw that pushed the game to go full attack mode. If you can't join them, destroy them. That's the mentality. Another theory circulating is that the game is bitter about the Super Bowl selection. Kendrick was chosen to headline the Super Bowl halftime show. That's one of the biggest honors in music, and the game, as a Compton legend himself, might feel like he deserved consideration or at least acknowledgement, but he was ignored. That kind of public snub, especially when it goes to someone from your own city, can create serious resentment. And this story is still unfolding with way bigger implications than just one incident between two rappers. What we're seeing here is a pattern that extends beyond just the Game and Kendrick. This is about legacy, relevance, and the desperation that comes when you see your era ending while someone else's is just beginning. Let's talk about the game's history with trying to start battles with bigger artists. Back in 2016, he went at Meek Mill hard. He dropped 92 bars, which was a brutal diss track. Meek responded. They went back and forth, but eventually the beef fizzled out and both moved on. The Game didn't get the career resurgence he was hoping for from that battle. His numbers didn't dramatically increase. His relevance didn't return to peak levels. Before that, he had years of tension with 50 Cent. That beef was real. It got violent at times, people got hurt, but even that beef, which was way more authentic than this Kendrick situation, didn't restore the Game to his mid-2000s level of success. He stayed relevant in the streets, stayed respected by hardcore hip-hop fans, but never reached those mainstream heights again. Then there was the Eminem situation. The Game dropped a freestyle going at Eminem, trying to bait him into a battle. Eminem completely ignored him. Didn't respond, didn't acknowledge it, just kept moving. And that silence was more devastating than any diss track could have been. It sent the message that the Game wasn't even worth Eminem's time or energy. That had to hurt. Now we're seeing the same playbook with Kendrick. The Game is trying to force a battle with someone who's clearly on a different level. And the scary part for the Game is that Kendrick has a history of ignoring challenges from rappers he doesn't consider worthy opponents. Joey Badass tried to challenge Kendrick directly. Kendrick ignored him. Jay Electronica threw shots. Kendrick ignored him. Big Sean tried to start something. Kendrick ignored him. Until he didn't, and then he destroyed him with the control verse. That's Kendrick's pattern. He ignores you until he doesn't. And when he finally responds, it's not a battle, it's an execution. We just saw what he did to Drake. He didn't just win that battle, he ended it. He made Not Like Us a cultural phenomenon that will be remembered for decades. He exposed Drake in ways that damaged his reputation permanently. The Game might be walking into that same kind of destruction if Kendrick decides he's finally had enough. But here's where it gets interesting. Sources close to Kendrick's camp say he's strategically silent. He's not ignoring the Game because he's scared or because he doesn't have a response. He's ignoring him because responding would legitimize the Game's relevance. It would give the Game exactly what he wants: attention, headlines, a place back in the conversation. By staying silent, Kendrick is essentially saying, "You're not on my level and you're not worth my time." That silence is more brutal than any diss track could be. It's the ultimate form of disrespect in hip-hop. It says, "I don't even consider you competition." And that might hurt the Game more than anything Kendrick could actually say on a track. Meanwhile, fans are divided on what Kendrick should do. Some say he needs to respond to protect his reputation and shut down the Game's false narrative about helping build his career. Others say he should continue ignoring it because the Game is beneath him at this point. Both arguments have merit, but the consensus among most hip-hop analysts is that Kendrick will stay silent, unless the Game keeps pushing and crosses a line that forces a response. And that's the dangerous game the Game is playing right now. He's poking the bear. He's trying to provoke a reaction. But if he succeeds in getting Kendrick to respond, he might not survive what comes next.
What we're seeing here is how desperation changes people in this industry. The Game was once one of the biggest names in West Coast hip-hop. He had classic albums, he had respect, he had a legacy. But watching that legacy fade while someone from your own city becomes the greatest rapper alive, that's a tough pill to swallow. And it's creating a situation where the game is willing to risk everything just to feel relevant again. The bigger conversation is about responsibility and consequences in hip-hop. When you constantly attach yourself to someone else's success story, when you try to claim credit you might not deserve, when you force confrontations with people who don't want to engage with you, you're not just promoting your music, you're potentially destroying your own legacy. Because if Kendrick ever does respond, if he ever decides the game has pushed too far, the response will be so devastating that it could erase everything the game accomplished in his career. Think about what happened to Drake. Before the Kendrick battle, Drake was considered one of the greatest ever. He had the numbers, he had the hits, he had the influence. But after Not Like Us and the other diss tracks, his reputation took permanent damage. There are serious questions now about his authenticity, his writing process, his character. That's the power Kendrick has when he decides to fully engage. He doesn't just win battles, he changes legacies. The game situation is a warning for anybody in hip-hop who's watching their relevance fade. The temptation to start beef with a bigger name is strong. It seems like an easy path back to headlines and attention, but it's a trap. Because if that bigger artist decides to respond, you might lose more than you gain. Your attempt to reclaim relevance could become the thing that permanently damages your legacy. And this goes beyond just the game and Kendrick. We're seeing a generational shift in hip-hop right now. The artists who dominated in the 2000s and early 2010s are watching a new generation take over. That transition is hard. It requires accepting that your era has passed, that you're no longer the center of attention, that younger artists are now the focus. Some artists handle that transition gracefully, others don't. The game is struggling with that transition, and instead of accepting his place as a respected OG who had his time in the spotlight, he's fighting against the inevitable. He's trying to force his way back into relevance by any means necessary, and that desperation is showing in everything he's doing right now. The industry is watching this situation closely because it's going to set a precedent. If the game succeeds in getting response from Kendrick, it sends a message that you can force your way into relevance by attacking bigger artists. But if Kendrick continues to ignore him, or if Kendrick responds and destroys him, it sends a different message. Stay in your lane, respect the hierarchy, and don't try to claim credit you don't deserve.
So where does this go from here? That's the question everyone in hip-hop is asking right now. The game has thrown everything he has at Kendrick. He's made his most aggressive disses, he's claimed credit for Kendrick's career, he's challenged him directly, and Kendrick has done nothing, said nothing. That silence is either the calm before the storm or the final answer. Industry insiders are predicting Kendrick will never respond directly on a track. Instead, they believe he might drop a single, devastating bar on his next album that addresses the game without even saying his name. Something subtle but lethal that lets everyone know exactly what Kendrick thinks about these claims. That would be the most Kendrick way to handle this. Acknowledge it without giving the game the battle he desperately wants. But there's another possibility. What if the game keeps pushing? What if he drops another diss track? What if he starts bringing Kendrick's family into it or crosses other lines? At some point, even Kendrick's strategic silence might break. And if that happens, we're about to witness one of the most lopsided battles in hip-hop history. The dangerous prediction that's circulating is this. If Kendrick responds, it won't be a battle. It will be an execution. After what he did to Drake, the game might be walking into something he can't survive. Kendrick has shown he's willing to go deep, to expose uncomfortable truths, to use every weapon in his arsenal to completely dismantle an opponent. The game's past has plenty of material Kendrick could use. The India Love allegations MW mentioned, questions about his authenticity in Compton, his pattern of starting beef with bigger artists for attention, his declining relevance, his exaggerated claims about his role in other artists' careers. All of that could be used against him in ways that would be devastating. And unlike Drake, who had the resources and platform to at least attempt a defense, The game doesn't have that same level of infrastructure. If Kendrick comes for him, there's no recovery. There's no comeback. It's over. But maybe that's what the game wants. Maybe he's reached a point where even negative attention is better than no attention. Maybe he'd rather be remembered as the guy who tried to battle Kendrick and lost than be forgotten entirely. That's a sad place to be for someone who was once one of the biggest names in hip-hop. The whole situation is tragic when you really think about it. Two Compton legends, both talented, both with legitimate accomplishments, ending up in this ugly situation because one can't accept that his time is past while the other is at the peak of his powers. Stay locked in, because this story is about to get even crazier. More details are dropping every day, more people are choosing sides, more evidence is surfacing about what really happened in Kendrick's early career, and reports say the game might not be done. There could be more diss tracks coming. This could escalate to levels we haven't seen yet. So drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the game has a legitimate claim about helping Kendrick's career, or is this all desperation and revisionist history? And do you think Kendrick should respond, or is he silenced the most brutal response possible? Do you believe MW's allegations, or is he just being overly protective of Kendrick? The hip-hop community is divided on this. Some people respect the game for standing up and demanding recognition. Others think he's embarrassing himself by trying to force a battle with someone who's clearly on a different level. Where do you stand? Make sure you like this video if you want to see more coverage of this developing situation. Hit subscribe so you don't miss a single update, because we're covering every twist, every response, every new piece of information that comes out. Turn on notifications, because this could explode at any moment. When Kendrick finally breaks his silence, if he breaks his silence, you're going to want to be here for it. I appreciate you for rocking with me through this deep dive into one of the most complex situations in hip-hop right now. This isn't just about two rappers going back and forth. This is about legacy, truth, desperation, and what happens when your relevance fades and you're willing to do anything to get it back. Stay safe out there, and remember, not everyone who claims they built you actually did. Sometimes people rewrite history to make themselves more important to your story than they ever were. Protect your narrative, protect your truth, and don't let anyone steal credit for the work you put in. I'll see you in the next one.